Hi, this is Lisa Guthrie. I am at 69th and Roosevelt. I'm at my storage, and I wanted to tell people how you can actually hurt yourself, and this is why I put stuff in storage. I just found paperwork from like 20 years ago, and I've actually smelled somebody in storage, and this was after one of the black Nazis was bragging that he had people in my storage. And I found a bunch of stuff, including like 20-year-old resume information and taxable income information and signatures. Oh my God. So, just even, I think it was a blank, oh no, this was something from years ago. And that is an example of what kind of stuff you might leave around to hurt yourself. I think I also found, I don't know if I found also more tenant papers, and it's a lease, and one of the scams that the black Nazis and the other bums at Aurora DSC trying to pull in or pull receipts where I live, and these dirty security guards from the Pike Place Market Preservation and Development Authority that don't work at the premises are trying to portray that I'm evicted. So what they'll do is portray that a witness is up, or not a witness, but a victim is up to no good by old paperwork, and just like I've said, running things back and forth in time, like, oh, see this old address? Where Kathy Cox lived. Now, I think that's the wrong, I think it might be the wrong, funny how that arrived, though. So I must have been giving out the wrong apartment. That was 6-7 years ago. 6-7 years ago. So I have declared things about my life. I'm trying to open up my life to show what other people will do. Like even, like let's say, as suggested, they have illegal broadcasts about you. And so let's say they have illegal surveillance. Well, one of the black Nazis did brag that he had my, that he actually was portraying that I was kicked out, and I just found some tenant information, and I wasn't kicked out. Or like another thing they'll try to run a scam with is like taking your old tax papers and pretending you're working, and then try to enslave you. Or like they will portray that you are not where you really are. So you might have disappeared, and maybe they'll cook up a story portraying that you live at an old address. Let me see what number that is. Number D. I mean, this was years ago, like in the 80s. 90s. And so, and it also has my Social Security number on it. And that is from years ago. Just flashed it. And I flashed some information. You just saw some very personal information. And I'm also going to flash my hands, including that show that I was damaged because the bums, the gang members, put something in my water and bragged that they had bleached my skin. This also shows my handprints, but it also shows strange striations on my hands from cleaning up glass. Do you see that? Now, I actually smelled somebody that had been in my storage. I could smell urine, and this was after a black Nazi portrayed that he had, or he told me, he bragged to me, and the bums are hanging, the not janitors, but the gang members are hiding out in the janitor's room. They're hiding out in the janitor's room, and they, like one of the black Nazis, I think it was the dirty security guard that comes from the LaSalle apartments. Now, I've been on a long odyssey for about 6 years of homelessness after, well, first things started out 13 years ago where I was gang raped in an apartment on Aurora. And by the way, this is an adult themed show. So if you're a child or a teen, you need to stop watching. So now, after I was gang raped, I was portrayed as a prostitute. Now, 6 years ago, I was beaten up at the LaSalle Hotel, that are actually apartments, by a dirty cop. I'm in my storage, by the way. And the dirty cop's name was Officer Bobby, and he is from the West Precinct, and he beat me up because I wouldn't be a prostitute, I guess, and I also wouldn't, and I didn't realize how closely he was connected, but the Pike Place Market security guards were actually sleeping with him. Two of them, two black Nazi guys. And those black Nazi guys, they're Bloods, and they come up to the apartment where I live now, the apartment building, and they hang out, including in this janitor's room, and they party. I guess DSC Aurora House is like a big crack meth connection. But my point right now, I'm showing you how if someone finds old paperwork, they have your Social Security, they have old details, even if you worked there 1 day, a year, 10 years, they can then get your old addresses, and they can start using it, and they could even spin off a dirty passport after they've killed you off. And I just found old pay stubs, and when a gang member enslaves you, they might even start to, so this has actually been a 13-year odyssey. When a dirty gang member tries to enslave you, they might spin off details of what you're doing based on what you're not doing and what you did in the past. So, like, getting a hold of an old, like, something from the 80s. Like, things you did in the 80s. You've got a whole history on people, and the gang members, the Bloods, the Zetas, and the Asian street gang members are definitely in on full identity theft, including rendering the real person unrecognizable. My face is full of scratches. And by the way, there's a twist and turn tonight, and I'm kind of going back and forth in my story, but there were quite a few of the ogress prostitute things at Elizabeth Gregory home, and they were threatening me. There's a razor plot. By the way, nobody's normal. They're all gang members. There's some construction on 50th across from University Heights. They were talking about razoring me, the construction guys. They were talking about putting me in a sewage. So the gang members will literally approach everyone to have you harmed. And these are all zombies. So in some ways it doesn't matter. But it's ironic because then these gang members become desperate to enslave you, including by spawning false relationships, even based on your old life. Like they might, now somebody's been talking about Bremerton a lot. There has been someone in my storage, I believe. And literally every apartment has probably been entered for the last 20 years because I complained about drugs. But for 13 years ago, I was gang raped, poisoned, had the shakes from my water and shampoo, couldn't drink anything or eat anything in my apartment without the taste of turpentine, or like even my vinegar had urine in it. So, anyway, the women of Elizabeth Gregory, there were some. This is Lisa Guthrie. I'm at 10507 Aurora Avenue North, Seattle. Excuse me, I'm not there yet. I live there. But I'm showing an old collection of paperwork and how it can be used against you, including like stuff you did in the 80s. And if somebody, they've got, they have my whole life right here. In the 80s, they have my whole life. They have friends. They had friends' names. Now, a lot of this junk, I have a lot of journals. I write down what happens to me. And even if it comes to nothing, and I write what's happening. If I'm smart, I write the date. And I started writing the date. Sometimes things happen so fast, I didn't even write the date. Thank not. And a lot of what I'm talking about also, it's personal. It's like a journal, but I'm trying to write the date at least every couple days, and then you can say, okay, the journal started on May 18th or whenever, blah, 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 or started on October 19th, and it's ending, if you look, because it starts on 8 p.m., and blah, 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 and then it goes through, and so you can see that it ends on October 30th, just by logically following. And if I have to go back and use a notebook, like half of it over because I've run out of paper, then I try to say, okay, I did use the notebook over. But a lot of these are undated, and a lot of it also has to do with spiritual things. But I just found, quite a lot of detail and like names. I didn't work in Arlington, but that's where the paycheck was issued out of. Didn't work in Michigan. And now, I want to tell you, now I'm going to catch you up to the present. Remember, I was getting raped 13 years ago, dirty cop. He was hiding a meth lab. That's what happened. And by the way, I want for something. I just took some notebook paper out of my, this locker. It had finely ground glass that felt like it was stinging my hands. And you can say I'm crazy, but look at my hand. It's cut up with glass. The gang members, once they want to make you ugly and unrecognizable, especially if you were once beautiful, see, it's all about survival of the shittiest. The black Nazis and the other scum, they're trying to kill off anyone good, decent, or talented. And by the way, I'm hearing, on a psychic perspective, you might think it's crazy. Now, I will tell you, everyone fell 13 years ago with Satan. Whether you believe it or not, I believe they did. And they literally took every spirit and made them terrible. Hi, this is Lisa Guthrie. I'm actually at my storage unit, and I'm showing how I found paperwork from the past and how I believe it's been used by gang members, including paperwork from the 80s. And I've been taunted that a black Nazi gang member who's very subversive, he has plots against Europe, etc., he bragged to me that he went to the storage to see if there was anything valuable, and well, the thing is, I found a clump of paperwork from the 80s with my whole, like you could say, life in there. 80s, 90s. Oh my God. And now, one way they will make a victim into a slave or disappear, they've got all their records, and that person knows everything about you. They want to get a hold of your photographs, even like, oh, I have ghost photographs I'll show those, from the 90s, or just photographs, let's see, 90s, 2000s. I think 2000s. And of course I have photographs that were buried, or just photographs. And then they can spin out your whole history, anything that, might be usable to fake an identity. A passport. I recently found a passport of me, and I'd been on steroids, and so the gang members will often why I was on steroids, well, asthma, allergies, chemical sensitivities, environmental sensitivities. But anyway, the gang members will use that, and they like to, like, let's say I look terrible because I was on steroids. Then they'll say, oh, you were never pretty. You always look like that one horrible picture. You know, people might have a horrible picture. But then, anyway, so I'm going on and on and on. I should tell you what's happening at Elizabeth Gregory home. And at Elizabeth Gregory home today, there were a lot of threats, including by a woman. It's a black female. She goes there occasionally. She's psychotic. She thinks she's married to Tupac Shakur, who is dead. And she talks online to someone claiming to be Tupac, and she actually believes it. And she was threatening, and she was talking to what could be her daughter, kind of a homely female. And a bum's playing Greek about her psychically. I can pick up on him. If you think I'm crazy, well, they're all zombies. They're all on a zombie network. And everybody who was given power 13 years ago when they fell with Satan, they were all bums. And there's been a concerted effort to get rid of anyone good or decent. I have to put this down. And one of the methods that gang members get rid of, like someone and then use their identity, they make you ugly or hideous, and then you disappear. Maybe you become someone who is a kidney for someone, and your whole body's parted out. So you disappear that way, and then you're buried. Like I've mentioned, a couple of the black Nazis in my building, they actually have access to funeral homes where they brag they don't need death certificates. By the way, I need to pray in here. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done as earth is in heaven. Please forgive our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, power, and glory forever. Amen. So there's a couple shooting plots, and Sandra Katowitz was bragging, and she walked down in a confident, cocky, like a gang member boy attitude. And she works at Elizabeth Gregory home. That's where I was today. She was telling someone, she said, we're going to shoot it. So Sandra Katowitz is a murderer. Pretty much everybody is a Blood or Zeta or Asian Street Gang member. And then there were, let's see, other people that were psychotic, and one of them was a big fat woman named Daphne. She was threatening me today. She's linking with another black Nazi at Aurora DSC. He's a head injury moron guy. He's very violent. I laughed because he's a moron. And she has supreme confidence that they can actually walk up and take like anyone's phone, and they're not going to complain. They think they can hit people and they're not going to complain. So anyway, now you don't want to leave stuff in your apartment, so or your house, so that people can actually glean information and start spawning like false passports, etc., if you've been the victim of gang violence, or if you think someone's entered. You don't want to leave your tax records from the 80s like I did. So I'm at Roosevelt self-storage. So that's why I kept the paperwork here. But recently, one of the black Nazis bragged that he had been here. This guy's in on stuff.